This is the European edition of Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. We bring you the European unicorns, startups, founders, regulators, and leaders innovating the rapidly evolving fintech scene today. A truly localized podcast with both English and local language content, with some of the world's most well-known hosts and influencers in the fintech sector globally. Join us every week as we explore what makes the European Union a phenomenal proving ground for many of the fastest growing fintech players in the world today. Okay, let's roll.
Hey guys, welcome back to Breaking Banks Europe. I'm Matteo Rizzi, the executive producer of the show. Today is the classic news from the fintech front. And I'm here with two friends and guests and the super experts in the field. I would like to allow them to introduce themselves for a couple of minutes. Let's start with Darren, who is Breaking Banks Europe Virgin yet. So Darren, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Matteo. Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Darren Franks. I'm British, as you can probably hear, but I haven't been in the UK for about 16, 17 years. Did a large stint in the Middle East, and I've now found myself in South Africa for the last 8 years. My day job, I run a search firm called Talent in the Cloud, and we do executive placements in the fintech sector across emerging markets. I also wear another hat, I wear a few other hats, but my other sort of main hat that I wear, I'm one of the co-founders of the Fintech Association of South Africa, which we're launching actually in a couple of weeks' time. So lots of activity going on there. And I live in Cape Town and try and play golf, and that's kind of me.
Great, Darren. And then, Ali, everyone knows Ali already. Also because usually he's the one doing the news from the fintech front, and he's in my shoes. But today, let's say that we have two commentators and two hosts. Ali, welcome back to Breaking Banks.
Thank you so much. I'm actually going to go by what you said at the beginning. I am the expert in all things fintech. There is no gaps in my knowledge whatsoever. And if you think otherwise, I'm sorry. That's a common mistake. I know I'm Ali Pettis. I run FF News, Fintech Finance, and as I spend most of my time talking to people like yourselves, Darren and Matteo, and hearing from some of the best and brightest in fintech about all that's happening. Yeah, no,
that's why.
Do you have? I was thinking about this the other day. Do you do like variations on the theme songs for when it comes in? Like for Christmas, you throw in a few jingle bells for this, and it's summer, so bit of a seagull effects thrown in there, or
you know me well enough. I'm absolutely open for anything that is disruptive, innovative. Out of the comfort zone, out of the blue, awkward, whatever. Yesterday, we are not starting the show officially just yet, but it's a nice anecdote. Yesterday, I was doing a Web3 all things presentation for PPRO, and we managed to talk about YouPorn and the Vatican in the same presentation in England. And I conclude the slide with being outside of the comfort zone with the Queen Elizabeth on Tinder. So, it's I'm pretty familiar. It's not that easy to swipe it off my feet, guys.
Interesting.
Oh, I love
that. Okay, guys, let's dive in with the first news. I would all of us like to comment. Which is, it seems that, the too big to fail thing in fintech, at least, it's starting, being a little bit wishy-washy. So I'm sure you read about Klarna. Klarna is raising money at half of the previous valuation. They were raising like $1 billion. At a much sort of lower valuation, like almost 50%. If we look at what they raised last time, is it like, what do you think of this? Is this like the first of many? Is because the global slowdown, or is just because valuation before were just like crazy high? Ali?
I think valuations beforehand have been crazy high, and this is a much more accurate depiction. I mean, the crazy valuations we were having, a couple of years ago, like when you hear how many commerce banks Stripe is worth or whatever, those valuations, they're kind of they're paper valuations. I think as these businesses get further down to your what round is Klarna on now? F, or even you hear one's going to.
Very soon there will be no Alphabet anymore available, I guess.
When you bring out, the Greek alphabet symbols, that's when you kind of gone a bit far. But I actually think that this is more of a reflection as to the VC market in general, as opposed to actually a reflection on Klarna itself. It's kind of, if somebody's working hard and they're getting huge amounts of praise, and then the following month they're working even harder but less praise, they're still working hard and getting a lot of stuff done. So I don't actually think this is a slight on Klarna's performance as a company. I think it's much more reflective of the VC valuations out there.
I agree. By the way, if you might have doubts on like the whole buy now pay later sort of market, but Klarna now is doing so much more than this and becoming like a true like a payment giants in general. So I think it's a super cool company. That's why. Darren, what do you think?
I think there are some market dynamics as well that probably have affected that. There is obviously talk of the global recession. I think investors are twitchy. I think markets are twitchy. So I think that probably impacts some of the valuation. But I know you just touched on it. But the whole sort of buy now pay later, I appreciate that Klarna do other things other than that. But that market specifically in emerging markets hasn't really picked off, and I can't see it kicked off, and I can't really see that happening again, just because of the nature of the markets that we operate in. So I think it's a combination of probably all the things you've mentioned. Again, I don't know the business well enough to comment on what happens internally and what have you. But I think if you take all those factors in, it's not surprising. I don't think they're the first.
No, and also, guys, that's my, the usually when you have such a massive devaluation of the company, it's a combination of like how fast they need the cash to grow. So they join some compromise. And I'm not talking about Klarna, specifically, but now I put my VC hat, and what I've seen in the past is that, of course, you compromise on your valuation because you want your cash fast. It's not necessarily a sign that the business is going bad at all, actually, but simply that the need for cash is faster than the thirst for like inflating valuation, for the sake of it, which is a little bit a worldwide sport sometimes, right? In the startup phase, Ali, no?
Well, yeah, if you need the cash fast, you'll be prepared to effectively down round. I've got to give a bit of a shout out here to a friend of mine who won the Round the World Payments race that we did a couple of years ago, Max Foch. I don't know if you guys have heard of Max before. He's he's actually the richest person in the world. He incorporated a business called Unlimited Money Limited, and he sold one share of it for £50 sterling, giving his net worth a valuation of over 500 billion pounds sterling, absolutely, eclipsing Mr. Musk and Mr. Bezos. So, and on paper, he is the richest person in the world. So, yeah, just to kind of bring that into sort of highlight the paper valuations, like what does it actually mean outside of vanity?
Indeed.
Which good, he's a good guy, Max. In terms of the buy now pay later element that Darren actually brought up, that's quite an interesting, because I almost would have thought that the potential in emerging markets has been quite strong for it, but if that hasn't happened, I know it's still across the whole of the developed market. I know this week we reported about how Revolut have just launched their kind of sort of pay later offering over in Ireland. But I know that there's like a few sort of ones happening, but I'm kind of curious as to why you think that there's been a bit of a slowdown in buy now, pay later outside of in the developing world?
What you see out here is lay-by rather than buy now, pay later. So, here's your goods, you're securing your goods or your holiday or whatever it may be, and you pay that off, and then once you pay that off, you obviously get your goods or get your holiday. That's popular, but the buy now pay later model, I just don't think it really works in this kind of market. We're obviously dealing with low income people and the demographics of the market, and I think the risk associated to it. There just hasn't been an uptake, and I think there's a bit of reluctance. There's a bit of doubt about if that model is sustainable. A, for the retailers, and B, for the actual providers. It's quite a high risk model.
And also, I think it's about culture, guys. And for the US, which is like a pretty credit not very educated, but certainly credit addicted type of population. It might the adoption is certainly fast, but when you look at like a South European market, like Portugal where I live, or like Italy where I'm from, or France where my kids are, I see very few guys actually willing to split whatever, a phone or a PC, from the moment they buy. If they want it, they buy it. If they don't, European people are a little bit more prudent in general, I want to say. So I think that the motivation actually to use the product might be lacking a little bit. But hey,
I know we're going slightly off topic of Klarna, but we look at Apple. I was having this conversation the other day with someone about Apple's buy now pay later product, and I get buy now pay later from a checkout experience if you're shopping e-commerce. But if you're actually in a shop and you've got your phone out, I mean, the whole thing with Apple is you've got Apple Pay, you tap, you go. It's very, very seamless. What do you guys think about Apple Pay and their buy now, pay later at checkout point? I'm talking about in a physical retailer. Do you think people are really going to go onto their phones and then start saying, I'm going to split it over 3 months, 6 months? Do you think that takes away from the experience? Or
Apple went all in and brought Credit Kudos a few months ago. And that was kind of a left field thing, and then you hear rumors of, like, if you're a Credit Kudos customer, since they've been acquired, that no, you can't, you have to find somebody else. So I'm kind of curious as to what Apple's play is going to be there, having, frankly, like one of the best credit rating companies out there. And if they can apply that at point of sale and make it seamless, then absolutely. If it's like, if it's just literally one question as opposed to a form, then I think that can be straightforward. Until they get to that point there, it's just the same as going to Argos.
Guys, I just realized that this is I believe it's my first news from a fintech fund that I'm moderating. And, we have a few news to comment. We have just the number one, and we are like 1/3 of the show almost. and I think it really depends, who you're talking with. But, next time I will just have one news. And then the show will take wherever it will take us. Yeah, but I think
stop talking.
Sorry, but I didn't get the brief.
No, not at all. I am actually enjoying this, and it's of course a little bit the point of this of this particular format of the show. So now let's shift completely. We all came back, at least you and I. No, actually, I was the only one in Money 2020. You sent a bunch of people there, sort of mimicking your presence with.
They brought a little mini me
exactly,
with them. Exactly. But they didn't. Yeah.
Exactly. You're clearly there in spirit, and that you weren't there because, of course, it's not exactly around the corner. But I was at Money 2020 a couple of weeks ago with the team, for breaking banks and breaking payments. And what was the thing that was the highlight for me? The fact that Swift, my own beloved Swift, they had a stand at Money 2020, and in that stand they will actually also promoting Sibos, talking about payments, innovation, and it was the first time that Swift that clearly, did compete with Sibos, with Money 2020 for years, right? And although Sibos is maybe 45 years old and Money 2020 maybe is 6, 7 top, I have no idea. Anyway, much, much younger. And I thought it was a pivotal moment, and I wonder, what you guys think. Ali, you have been both at Money 2020 and the Sibos sort of aficionado for a while. So, what do you think?
The question I have is whether Sibos and Swift were at Money 2020 in the same way that Sibos 2017 you had Ripple at Sibos in quite large force, and they were literally saying, "Come to our booth," and then herding people onto a coach to take them to their own event.
I remember that.
Cheeky. What is if I don't really think it's kind of a Swift thing to do, but to do a similar thing there at Money 2020. I think it's representative of the time that we're in. That there again is no one is in, to quote Ben Robinson, nobody's in a big fortress anymore. Everyone's part of a forest, part of the same ecosystem. So I think it was most likely there in good spirit, and again highlighting that there's plenty of room, but also that level of collaboration pushes everybody forward. Cheesy, but true.
But it is cheesy and true. And by the way, I remember so well that 2017 because actually Ripple sent, remember, black vans to literally move people for 500 meters from one venue to the other, because the two events were literally at the same time, right? Yeah. This year they're in the same city, but at least they were smart enough to not put it at the same time. Darren.
Well, I didn't go to Money 2020 this year. I went a few years ago, and thoroughly enjoyed the event. But no, Sibos is still on the bucket list. Maybe next year. So yeah, I think it's good to see all players of the ecosystem there, whether they're sort of the forefront of technology or whether they are sort of incumbent operators or I don't know, legacy systems or whatever it may be. I think it's good to have everyone there. That like you said, Ali, it's a big enough market that everyone can get involved in, and I think it shows good willing. So I don't really have a comment. I wasn't there, but I'd love to have been there to take the buses to another event. That sounds pretty cool.
No, and I look forward to Sibos this year. We are going to be there with both the Breaking Banks Europe show and the Breaking Payments, interviewing a bunch of people. And probably, Ali, we will do some exchange of courtesies, right? We will send guests over to each other. You guys are there too, right?
Oh yeah, we're going to be we're trialing something at London FinTech Week. If it works, we'll be aiming to bring it to Sibos, and if it does, Matteo, we'll give you a haircut when you're there.
I'm looking forward to it, and then I'm going to NFTs. I'm going to NFTs a selfie with it, and then put it on the auction.
There is talk, I believe, of actually the Sibos tickets being available as an NFT this year, which I absolutely love. So you actually have your ticket as an NFT, which is
would be a super very interesting innovation. Okay, guys. Last news before we break, and let's do something which is a bit closer this time to Warren. To Darren's space. Sorry.
Well, let's Warren.
I don't know where this Warren came in. Sorry. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that last year we got the first unicorns out of Africa. Great, and someone could think that this was the beginning of a new era, for African fintechs. The Ali part of this conversation is that you can see that in many conferences now there are a lot of African founders, especially the unicorns one, that are actually coming over, including Money 2020, which was super super interesting. And what do you think? I mean, recently, it's like they added the zero, literally, in the type of money that African startups were raising. So we were talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 billion. Now is 10, 20, 30, 40. And every month there is a 30 to 50 million round. I actually super interesting, like Kuda, the Nigerian bank. They just hired a friend of mine. It used to be the Southern Europe. Lavezzi, Mrs. Lavezzi, is the Southern Euro manager for Revolut. So, hey, Kuda, African bank, hiring the someone from Revolut poaching people from a much bigger bank. I mean, it's super interesting. It's like, the scene has been completely revolutionized, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think from international investors coming into the market, because that's where all the money is. It's not locally sourced; it's international. I think there's now an awareness of the market opportunity here on the continent. And again, people say Africa. Africa's a bloody big place, right? So, if we look at sort of country by country, you look at Nigeria, obviously where Kuda are operating. You look at the Kenyan market. You look at obviously South Africa. They're the kind of key markets. Then you've got Ghana and Tanzania and what have you. There's I think the difference between fintech in emerging markets and fintech in developed markets. Fintech in developed markets is a little bit more when you talk about Revolut, and it's more of a luxury app, right? It's a lifestyle app, it's a lifestyle experience. Whereas if you look at what happens and what fintech is in emerging markets, it's about financial inclusion. It's about getting people who are completely either unbanked or partially banked into the financial services world and ecosystem, and that's the biggest differentiator. And I think once you see the amount of people that are unbanked in Nigeria or on the continent, it's frightening. But B, you sit there probably as an investor and go, there's a big opportunity here. So that's helped a lot. I think the perception of African businesses, African fintechs, has also done pretty well over the last few years. Again, a lot of the founders who have raised these big ticket numbers, tend to be Western educated. So tend to have come from the US or the UK or other parts of Europe, have been educated there and then have set up fintechs. Kuda is a good example. Flutterwave's a good example. OPay's slightly different because that was Chinese backed, a couple of rounds ago. So that's probably a slight anomaly. But if you look at actually the dynamics between what the founders are within those fintechs, that they have some common traits. But I think, the market is huge. The market is susceptible to, fluctuations in what happens and what happens globally. But if you still think of financial inclusion being the main driver, that I don't think will be affected by any sort of, downturn in the market. I think there are still massive opportunities, and, payments still runs, or payments is probably still the biggest part of fintech in the emerging markets, probably followed by microfinance, microlending. Fido, who is a Ghanaian-based, Israeli-based, but Ghanaian-based microfinance company, they've just raised a big round as well. So there's quite a lot of this, microfinance, some of the more developed markets in Africa, so Kenya and Nigeria and South Africa, and that's that's stimulating a lot of activity. Obviously, they're raising big rounds to bolster their their capital and their loan books. So yeah, there's lots of really exciting things happening here.
Matteo, you've messaged me to say Ali goes straight. Do you mean go straight into adverts, or?
No, come on. You should don't unveil the back kitchen, man. I say go straight. Like, don't wait for me.
I was going to wait.
You, what the hell are you thinking about?
I was going to go straight into just basically absolute.
Go straight into where?
Kuda is incredible. That's the thing I was going to go on to, but I was going to be waving that Kuda flag, because what Babs and the team have done out there, the hockey stick growth, but also that potential growth is phenomenal. And also, Darren, I think when coming to speaking with VCs, it's an easy sell to say there's 200 million people in Nigeria without a bank account. We want to get them a bank account, because if that's $1 every year from them, you got $200 million. It's a big market. But you mentioned that it's not just about financial inclusion now. What are some of the opportunities and the types of VCs that we're seeing in this? Because if it's more advanced, so to speak, levels of financial services, why not go to a more mature market like Europe, for example?
Well, I think it depends on the risk appetite of a VC, really, doesn't it? There's some big private equity firms based out of London who have got some massive investments in Africa and African fintechs. A big one was the DPO Group, which was founded in Kenya. When I first started working with them 7 years ago, there was about 30 people. They sold to Network International last year for $280 million, which was an amazing journey. So that's payments. And if you look at the the B2B side, how can you facilitate not only local e-commerce, but pan-African e-commerce? And that's going to be a big thing coming up. How do you make that borderless? Obviously, there's lots of currencies in Africa. There's a lot of exchange controls as well between countries, which can be quite complicated. So, working with the big African banks, working with the regulators to try and lower those barriers and to allow commerce to trade and have those sort of free trade agreements effectively, that's going to impact the market massively. I think with general sort of fintech, it other than perhaps South Africa and Kenya, I know I've mentioned that a couple of times, but because of M-Pesa, which was started 14, 15 years ago, maybe even longer, that's really the home of, as far as I'm concerned, that's the home of fintech, right? That's where fintech really started from, and everything's kind of exploded from there. So
I will cheer you on with that.
Yeah, with the exception of probably Kenya and South Africa, and you look at the rest of Africa, there's so many untapped opportunities. I think once you get people financially included, then you have all the different layers of value-added services that you can add on, whether it be loans, whether it be financing, whether it be bond mortgages, whether it be school fees and being able to do cross-border remittances. And that's obviously a massive part of the market. You've got the likes of Chipper Cash and WorldPay and World Remit and all of the other money transfer operators who open up corridors in developed markets to send funds back home. And people are getting quite clever on how they do that, whether they use that using sort of blockchain, DLT technology, whether there's some sort of value add on the recipient side, whether you can control in, if you're remitting funds to someone in wherever, in Nigeria, you can actually say, right, this $20 is for education, this $10 is for grocery, and this $5 is for whatever else it may be. So people are getting quite clever in terms of the services they're offering around remittances, because sending money point to point at the moment is still quite expensive. But I think with the technologies I've mentioned, the price points coming down, then the MTOs need to start thinking about how are they going to keep their revenues up if it's kind of margins are being squeezed and it's a race to the bottom, a bit like it has been in payments. The margins are getting eroded. So how do you build more value-added services that you can charge your consumers or your recipients for?
I actually think that the market in Africa is already beyond the usual suspect countries like Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, and South Africa, where everybody has been, looking at and investing in. There is also, which is a market that we at FTS with an education initiative are actually targeting. There are also like 500 million people in between the Francophone and the Lusophone, like Portuguese speaking Africa, that are way more, I want to say, not financially included, as well as, but as digitized as the rest of Africa. It's just a matter that because the critical mass, and they have a single currency in the case of Francophone Africa, and in the case of Lusophone Africa, huge tie with Brazil, that is not exactly a small country. So I think that this. And don't get me started on the African market in general. Otherwise, I will do the show. I will do the show myself. But there will be new frontiers, opening up pretty soon. Guys, we have so many more news to comment and so little time. So I propose we quickly break for a couple of seconds, and then I'll see you back at Breaking Banks Europe. It's a wrap.
Let's talk about the future of payments. Your Breaking Payments exclusive series is here, and we are ready to showcase how fintech has deconstructed the payments industry and is rebuilding it seamlessly as an embedded experience for the client. Stay tuned for new episodes every month on Breaking Banks Europe.
Hey guys, thanks for being back with us. Still Breaking Banks Europe, still from the FinTech front with Ali and Darren. The next news is not really a news, is more like a personal view that I am pretty sure is concerning a lot of savers and wealth managers as well. So we all, I don't know, do you guys hold crypto? I do hold crypto a little bit, not huge, but a little bit, you know. Do you? Like you're nodding, so a little bit? No?
You have to make,
Yes.
you have to make it painful at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we all suffer a different amount of pain, right? But, you know, crypto markets has been, you know, crashing for the past year, I want to say. Depends how long, you know, you wanted to be a holder or not, but clearly they're not in their best shape. Okay. And so personally, I hold a little bit of crypto, and I never I never bought like single stocks, you know, all funds or ETFs, because I'm not the type of guy that is looking at the PC every day to see whether or not Google or Amazon is taking 8% or down 5%, whatever. But for the first time, I realized that, you know, the GAFAM space, plus maybe, I want to say GAFAM plus the PayPal and the Netflix and a couple of the NVIDIAs and a couple of very big, they also lost not as much as the crypto, of course, but I want to say, you know, recession, right? So there are two dips or potential dips to buy here: crypto or like more traditional tech stocks. And I'm curious, you know, what do you think? Is that like, is the dip deep enough? What's your personal experience? And I don't want to know how many millions you have in Amazon, Ali. I know you're a rich guy, but you see what
loads.
I mean? You know, these are not the type of things I want to unveil, but more about your philosophy, right? Because maybe there are some tips that can be useful for our listeners, and I will share mine afterwards, I promise.
I've got a tip, actually. So whatever I do the opposite. Money.
You haven't been a lucky investor just yet.
Ever. So yeah, whatever I do, don't do the opposite, and you'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine.
We are looking forward to counter your provisions then. You know, make sure you share them on Twitter, Darren.
So are you not remortgaging your house and getting out as much loans as possible to put into Dogecoin? Because if you're not, I have to do that then. Oh,
I've already remortgaged it 4 times, so I've run out of equity.
Don't ask this question to Twitter. I really don't ask this question to Twitter, because there is such a strong sentiment of hashtag buy the dip. And my favorite, obviously, laser ray till 100K. Yeah, don't ask this to Twitter, because there's quite a borderline, almost religious kind of
cult following.
About absolutely buy the dip. I mean, it's all the cliches of, you know, don't buy what you're not prepared to lose. What I've been personally doing, this is not financial advice or whatever illegal. I love Canadian banks on free trade. The likes of Free Trade and 212. It's a fun way to kind of sort of learn these things. But Canadian banks, they're relatively stable, because I think there's a fair valuation as to what they actually are. They always pay a nice little dividend. Like every quarter, I get 5-10 quid. I was like, yeah, I'll take that. Brilliant, thank you. Obviously, then I've got my Amazon and Google stock. You know, I've lost a couple of 100 million from that over the last week. But you know, easy come, easy go.
Exactly.
Well, my team now have got these gold bots that they're running, and they're all getting quite excited about the returns they're getting daily on gold bots. So I'm yet to try it, so I can't comment.
Me, for the first time, I decided to start a little bit of GAFAM stock, also because my son was going to the university next year. The thesis for his a final college presentation was, are we under the power of the GAFAM without realizing, something like this. So all of a sudden, he made me realize, I helped him, of course, because the pitch was in English and then a bit in Italian and stuff like that. So I was like the official rehearsal partner, of the kids. And but all of a sudden, it's like, hey, we were sort of trying to check how powerful these guys were. And all of a sudden I start, investigating a little bit and realize that, hey, maybe it's a good time, because it's always, if you buy a stock at least be sure that you will stay, for a little while. And then, of course, not starting everything, with the huge sum, but by a little bit, just in case that the curve of the dip, is not finished yet. And, and that is the type of super basic approach, because Darren, by the way, I have been so unlucky as well with the investments, but the unluckiness was only due to a lack of patience. It wasn't due to the how do you say the fact that the investment was wrong. Unless I have to admit, one time I lost all my money in a Vertical Computer Inc., which was a penny stock, because it was an advice but I was like 26 years old. So I believe it is prescripted and it doesn't count really.
Wow.
Okay, guys, let's be after this very thought through financial advice. I want to talk about
show off my Wirecard stock right now. Look at that.
The what?
There we go. My very very fintech on brand. I was like, Wirecard, I need to get in on this. So yeah, my 25 pence worth of Wirecard delisted from the stock exchange. Cheers for that, guys.
I lost a lot more. They're a client of ours. So yeah,
oh, really?
yeah.
But you kept your reputation. That's the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Just we dealt with them in Africa. We didn't deal with them in Germany. It was fine.
Okay, guys. The last thing, as a tradition, and I know you're unprepared, but it's a surprise. I wanna give you a little bit the opportunity to comment something that you saw recently, and one for Ali and one for Darren, that it sort of struck your mind. For me, out of this, the Swift one was really something that it was a surprise for me, and I wanted to share. And also, it is something that it was not only a surprise, but the sign of a change of an era. Two competing institutions, at least on financial services event, now all of a sudden collaborating that much. Ali, what have you seen recently that you would like us to give a shot at?
It's something that it's all one institution, but it's kind of competing against itself. That I just wanted to highlight. I did a little bit of moderating for Amazon. And I was like, yeah, Amazon, it's a big, big organization. And I've listened to all the audiobooks about it. So I kind of had that background. But obviously one of the things in it is one of the Jeff Bezos 10 commandments, or whatever they call it, is about being frugal, being truly frugal.
Okay.
So I then got a little thing saying, yep, these are the flights that we're going to put you on. And I thought, can I not take these other flights because it's a much better time? I said no, because there's no business class flights available in that slot there. And I said, don't be stupid, send me the money and I'll book a nice cheap 100 quid EasyJet flight for that. So the agency then said, I don't know if we can that back and forth. Eventually, I ended up getting the money for the business class flights and taking a nice little cheap EasyJet one. But it just struck me as very probably because it was going through an agency and that they'd grown to the point where they weren't following their own advice as to what made them successful. They'd kind of grown to a point where what made them so successful, i.e. that frugality for things that aren't serving the customer, it doesn't matter whether someone's flying on a business flight or a regular economy or whatever, you still get there at the same time. They almost needed a bit of a refresher on that, so I used that as kind of the opening of my talk, with lots of kind of sort of murmurs, across the board with that. But yeah, I'd say organisations forgetting what made them successful. I think the likes of Monzo, Starling, Revolut, N26 as well, kind of not always, but on occasion they take a step back and think, why were we so popular, had that fast growth, and kind of hold on to your roots, which I think a lot of businesses need to do.
That's so interesting. Actually, I have not experienced yet, on my clients at least, such an attitude just yet. But it is true that there is is potentially quite dangerous, right?
Darren? Exactly.
I'm trying to think. I consume so much news; it's difficult to kind of decipher what to talk about. But I was on a call earlier on this week with the Intergovernmental FinTech Working Group, which is a group here in South Africa, and it was all about the crypto regulations, and there was a big talk of them stopping arbitrage in South Africa. The South African Revenue Authority getting really involved in crypto, seeing how they can get their sort of slice of the pie. What some of the banks are doing in terms of trialing. Whether it be crypto holdings or whether it be the CBDCs, there was 260 people that attended this webinar. And looking through the list, I mean, there was people there from all walks of fintech, from payments companies to the banks. To the loans companies, to SME financing. Going back to our previous conversation about sort of crypto as an asset class and as an investment, I'm yet to reap the rewards. But I think as a technology to enable cross-border payments and to enable faster payments, I think that's certainly here to stay, because you've got some of the biggest players in this market that are looking at this really, really seriously and investing quite a lot of money in terms of research. So for me, hello, we've got a new host.
Hey,
hello.
Somebody's just woken up, so I'll keep them on for a little bit.
That's great. That's good. Can we tweet this? Can we tweet this picture? And that giraffe is amazing.
What do you reckon, Phil? We're talking about Africa, so there we go.
I've got a real one in my garden. I've got a real one. So for me, Matteo, it was about the sort of collaboration that happens within our sector. I think going back to your Swift sort of comment a bit earlier on, I think this is a really unique sector where you've got lots of people competing and there's lots of competitors going for sort of very similar markets, but everyone is willing to come into the same room and have conversations certainly when it comes to regulatory matters. And that's one of the reasons that, the FinTech Association of South Africa is set up to give a sort of focal point to be able to go into lobby the regulators and what have you. So for me, I think, generally, and there are a few exceptions, but I won't mention any names. The majority of people in fintech are really cool people. It's a really great sector to be involved in. Everyone's more than happy to sort of give you time and to have conversations and share knowledge. And I think that's what makes this a really special sector.
Interesting. And actually, my highlights for the week is the fact that I was in London, outside of London, yesterday and the day before for a client event, and the theme was Web3 and the metaverse in financial services. Okay, and of course, I did not pretend, like between us many do, to be an expert on Web3 and the metaverse. But on the contrary, what we did is that we did like an Oxford debate style presentation where, backed by research, we talked about, NFTs, bank and the metaverse, remittances using crypto, or like payments over gaming, payments in the gaming space, and a whole lot of, I want to say, research-backed facts to ask the crowd whether or not the fact that, for example, Web3 payments could kill the remittances space because by definition they are ubiquitous, cheap, they work with low value payments, they are independent from location, there is zero friction, etc. Whether or not the fact that Web3 payments in the next decade could potentially kill remittances, the remittances space on Web2, it was a thing or not. And it was a little bit an experiment because we admitted that it's very hard to predict the future, and Web3 could sound like the new ICO thing, or the whole metaverse. It could be another Second Life, type of experiment that completely crashed. And And of course, we pushed the crowd to sort of position themselves like left or right, whether they agree or disagree on these different topics. And there were very little consensus, So there are a lot of there is a lot of skepticism, but also a lot of potential. I wonder how much have we been exposed to Web3 and Metaverse so far, beside whatever you can read, that Zuckerberg flying on the Facebook ad and on the Meta ad and whatever, because I have done a lot of research recently, and what is more fascinating about it is the opinion that generates into the people that are really struggling to see objective problems today, like notarization, remittances and financial inclusion and authentication and identity, etc., etc. And they almost look at this magic potion, as if the metaverse could be one. I wonder whether or not you have been exposed to it or not, Ali.
I don't think it's going to go the same way as I remember. Was it Long Island iced tea blockchain, and all of a sudden a nice little spike happened on their share price? I can't see the same thing happening with Web3 or Metaverse. If they change that, add that to the name, that'll make a big difference. I also think Metaverse. One of the things that, again, like yourselves, I've been a good chunk of research, but I'm not an expert in Metaverse, unlike. And it is quite a broad topic. And one of the things I was curious with was the virtual reality element. Because back when we could fly, I would always, I'd have a little virtual reality headset and I'd wear that on a plane. And that was such an efficient thing. And I spent the entire time going, why is nobody else doing this? And things like that, I think, is what's actually going to drive things like the metaverse forward, when it's kind of seen in a practical way, where what are the options to do with that moment there? You can sit there, and I think what I'm trying to say about it is where it's going to thrive is not where you're trying to recreate what already exists in the real world, but where you kind of use it for its, because the example people always give, come to our virtual bank branch in the metaverse. Nobody wants that, but if you can take that reality and augment it with everywhere that you look, for example, it gives you kind of how long it will take you to pay that back, or what levels of work you need to do, etc. That is actually kind of pushing it forward, as opposed to just recreating what's already here.
Darren.
So it's interesting, Ali, you mentioned virtual reality. I was involved in a startup a couple of years ago, virtual reality, and the business has since pivoted and now does virtual reality for training in Africa. So it's using very lightweight headsets where you slot your phone in, and it's mainly used for the agri sector, so the agricultural sector. So that I can see as a benefit, right? I think there's a use case for that, right, which I think is relevant. I went to a conference or a talk a few weeks ago, and it was about the metaverse of Web3. Honestly, I came out more confused than when I went in. Just so many questions, and the ultimate question was, but why? Certainly, when it came to sort of VR, it was like, personally, and I've tried the Oculuses. It made me feel really sick. I was on a spacewalk or something, and I felt really disorientated, and I didn't enjoy the experience at all. So that's just my personal preference. Can I see it for things like gaming? I was out with a colleague yesterday, a young guy, and he was talking about virtual reality gaming, and how involved he gets, and how much he enjoys it. And I can get that for sure. Do I see proper applications for it that's going to change the world? I don't know. It's probably one of those investments I should have made and never did.
Cue Black Mirror references, because that's the thing. Like, why would you go to work when you can go and put on a virtual reality set and be virtually at work the entire time? I think there's a lot of dystopian opportunities there. That sounds horrific. Dystopian opportunities.
Okay, guys. I think that we are with this like a huge sort of question marks. But the now this word got me fascinated. So I think that I'm going to deepen the research a little bit, and eventually, make an Oxford podcast, an Oxford debate podcast. With for and against and skeptical and judges, on this. That would be fun. I thank you so much for being with us today and commenting some of the news. Ali, thank you for having introduced us the future executive producer of Breaking Banks Europe, Ali.
Oh yes, yeah, the wee one there. You joke about this. My other son was when 3. He was the youngest speaker at Money 2020, with a badge and everything. So it kind of brings it all right back around.
Amazing, Darren. Thanks a lot for being with us.
No, thank you for the invite,
guys. That was the Breaking Banks Europe news from the fintech front, and it's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Europe, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with FinTech Stage. Don't forget to tweet us out, shout out, or post to the team at Breaking Banks EU on Twitter. If there's something or someone you'd like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next week on Breaking Banks Europe.